Because I don't want to make it harder for like when I'm working in a writer's room, I don't want to make it harder for myself. I want to make it simple for me to think about these problems. So I don't want to make it harder. The job is hard enough as it is. Why make it harder? Make it simpler. You're telling a story. It's not heart surgery.
You're listening to Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Michael Jamin. I'm here with Phil Hudson, and today we're answering the question, or at least we're asking it. Who knows if we'll have an answer. Should I go to film school? I get this one a lot. Let's talk about it. Well, first of all, Phil, you're better. You might be better than me to answer because you actually went to film school. Where'd you go?
I went to Santa Fe University of Art and Design, and I got a bachelor's of fine arts in film story development from a film school there.
How many years is that degree?
It's a 4-year degree.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's a bachelor's program. So it wasn't like a master's, like an NYU master's in film. It was a bachelor's degree. And I remember when I was contemplating going, I just really met you. I'd been working with your wife for a while. Mm-hmm. And I asked you, should I go there or should I go to Hollywood? And you said, well, I don't know how valuable film school is outside of the network you'll build there. Mm-hmm. But the work's here. So that's a personal choice. And then you said, well, at least you'll be able to teach college. And I said, well, I don't know if I will because it won't have a master's. And you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, how much did that degree cost? Or not necessarily you, but most people.
Yeah. So the school, it was $30,000 a year. Okay. So it's $120,000 to get a 4-year degree. Right. And I think at the time, the average student would take about 5 years to get a bachelor's degree. So it would be $150,000 for that degree.
Because I just Googled USC film school and it's $53,000 a year. And I don't know if it's 2 or 3 years, but either way, it's enough to give you, heart palpitations.
Yeah. To put this into perspective, my brother he's a lawyer, went to law school in Idaho, and he's a lawyer in Montana, where he passed the bar, and I think his degree cost him $120,000 to be a lawyer.
Right, to be a lawyer, and you can immediately start earning that back the minute you
he's making more money per hour than I am now. Right. Like he really took his time, and now he was scraping by living on student loans, building up debt to get through film school with a family. I mean, he's billing 5 to 6 billable hours per day at $200 an hour.
Right,
he is making more in a day than I make as a PA on Tacoma.
Yeah, right. So, but film school, so should people go to film school? So here's the thing, you're going to graduate with a lot of debt, and we don't know when or if you'll ever pay that off. As far as I can tell.
So I can be transparent on that too. Like I had a Robert Redford scholarship and a talent scholarship. So my cost, all in, aside from what I paid, I have $40,000 in student loans from school.
Right.
And my school closed down. It doesn't exist anymore. So
do you have to pay back your loan then?
I do.
You do, even though who's it going to? They don't have school.
The federal government loaned me the money and then paid the school, and that is something I can never get rid of. You can't file bankruptcy on it. It lives with you till death. You will always owe that money unless you pay it back. The other side of this is there is a way that I could challenge that and say, well, my school's gone, because the school actually never sent me my diploma. So I have the itinerary, the photos, like the whole thing, but I never got my diploma from the school. And there's a process to go get it through the parent organization laureate to go get that, but it's a bit of a pain in the butt, and they messed up my transcripts because I did that 4-year program in 2.5 years. So I really expedited things because I saw the writing on the wall that it was going to shut down. So I could challenge it and I could get that waived, and then I would lose my degree. So I would have wasted 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So it's not really worth fighting to me. I'd rather have the degree. So I've just got to find the time to go fight that other battle for it.
Well, just so people know, I worked in TV for a long time, 27 years. And most of the writers that I work with, if you want to be a screenwriter, very, very few actually went to film school. I was at a party a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine who told me he went to film school, and I worked with him for many years. It's like, you went to film school? It just doesn't come up. Mm-hmm. And when you get hired for it, no one's going to ask you to see your degree. No one cares what your GPA was in film school. No one cares if you went or you didn't go. All they care is, can you put the words on the page that compel people to turn to the next page? And you don't need just the fact that you have a degree or even an MFA in creative writing or whatever. Yeah. The degree is worthless the knowledge that you gain might be worth something, depending depending on who's teaching it to you. And I think that is more dependent on not necessarily the school or the program, but who's teaching that semester. Who did they get? Often these are adjuncts, and sometimes the adjuncts are working screenwriters who have a break in their schedule and want to teach, and you may find one that's great, but these adjuncts don't get paid a lot of money. So it's not and when I mean a lot of money, I'm talking about
a couple $100 a month.
Yeah, the people I've talked to for a semester, maybe they make $4,000. Like, it's not a lot of money, so they're not doing it for the money, and it's not a long-term career option when you're only making $4,000 for a semester. It's ridiculous. So it just depends on who they got that semester. You may get somebody great, you may not. So the knowledge you get may be fantastic, but again, it's a trade school. You're getting, if you want to be a filmmaker, do you want to learn editing? Do you want to learn lighting? Or if you want to, then maybe, but as a screenwriter, no, you'll learn that and a million other things. There are way less expensive options, including our course that we offer, that will teach you probably more in that area of specialty in the writing aspect. But I don't teach lighting, So
yeah, and I decided to go because I was always a bit more interested in being an auteur, right? Shooting, writing, directing, producing, editing, just kind of understanding the full gamut. I also have like a bit of a control need, like I need to be able to understand. And this comes from being in the tech space where I'd have engineers telling me something was going to take 3 weeks to get done. And then you learn how to code it and you realize they're just milking the clock. And so that it comes from, I'd like to understand the full process so I can better work within that process and hold people a little bit more accountable from a leadership perspective. But and your note on film school is interesting too. Like on the writing side, no one cares. On the production side, I have actually had conversations with people who roll their eyes when they hear you into film school.
Yeah, really? Producers, you mean?
Art directors.
Why do they roll their eyes?
Every department.
Why do they roll their eyes?
I dealt with this when I was a missionary. When you're a missionary, you've been out doing this stuff for like 6 months, and then you're asked to train somebody new. That guy's coming from a place where they taught them how to be a missionary. But learning how to be a missionary versus being a missionary, just different things. Learning how to make a film and like learning how to do a setup versus how a set actually runs, they're different things. The education may be correct, but the environment changes things. And so without fail, people who come in who said, I went to film school, think they know how to do it, think they know better than their superiors, and it creates conflict because those people think they're better than the people teaching them.
Phil, we didn't have this conversation off the air. So just so you know, I worked with a producer on one of my TV shows, the line producer. He was the producer. And he said the same exact thing. He said that when he hires PAs for the show, and most of the PAs come out of film school, whatever, 100,000 in debt. He goes, I have to untrain them. I have to unlearn them everything they learned because they think they know, and it's just not how it works. And I was like, really? He goes, yep, that's how. He goes, I don't. So he doesn't prioritize hiring film students. He just as well hired someone who's not a film school student, have them learn on the job and learn instead of winding up 100,000 in debt. They get paid, although not a lot, but they get paid to learn.
No, you get paid. It is, I always described it, and I knew this too, because when I moved to LA, I was 31 and I'd already had a very successful corporate career and I could have pursued that career. When I was in college, I got prospected to go be like a chief marketing officer at a bunch of startups in San Francisco, paying way more money than I make now. And I turned them down because I was way more passionate about this thing I want to do in film. But I always described it to people like I knew I was going to get coffee for people. I knew it was a lot of yes, sir, no, ma'am. Yes, sir, no, ma'am. However much you need, what can I do? Because it really feels to me like it's the apprenticeship model out here, right? This is a trade where you learn under someone else who has done it. And you not only learn how to do it by the book, but you learn all the tips and tricks and hacks they had to figure out that were passed down to them as a lineage from the people that taught them, who learned it from the guy who was running around with the horses in 1908.
Yeah. Right. So another thing though you might get from film school. So in other words, let's break it down. okay, the diploma is not worth anything, but the knowledge you might get, especially in terms of screenwriting, might be valuable. Just totally depends, but you can spend a lot less on it. You might get contacts depending on where you go, depending on your graduating class, and if you are willing to stay in contact with your, if you stay in contact with your people, if you're friends with them. If you're not, those contacts are worthless. Your graduating class is worthless if you don't know the members of your graduating class.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's an expensive venture, and it didn't help you get so when you got your first PA job, did they ask if you went to film school?
No, I think in fact when I interviewed, it was probably one of those situations where I was disqualified because of it.
Oh, really?
Because in the interview, it was for Brett and Link's buddy system. You got me the interview. You told me, I can get you the interview, I can't get you the job. You got to earn the job. And I showed up, and I remember I disqualified myself by telling them I wanted to be a writer. That's really what disqualified me. And then, no one has asked me once, like not a single person has ever asked me if I went to film school.
Right. And so
I've had to bring it up once or twice out of defense, because someone was like trying to belittle. This is like, I ran into like a really toxic person in a season of Tacoma OT recently. And that person was belittling me by trying to explain to me things. And I had to say, yeah, I learned that in film school. And then she looked at me and was like, yeah, I went to film school too. I understand. I know how to calculate it. I get it. Right.
So, but there are things in terms of screenwriting that you did not learn in film school.
Oh man. And this is no knock on anybody. You talk about like good professors and bad professors. We had an adjunct professor named Ed Kamara, and he's like a legend. He wrote Lady Hawk, which was like a huge hit in the 80s. He wrote the Bruce Lee movie. Like, he has actual credits under his belt. Retired, lives in Santa Fe, and he would come in and teach one class per year, and it was intermediate storytelling. And I got way more out of that class than I did any of my other writing classes, because he was telling you, here's how you write a screenplay, and we had to write a screenplay to get credit in the class. But compare that to my first class, and nothing against the professor, but we spent 4 weeks learning audio visual format for PSAs. And then we learned how to use Celtics, because he wrote the book on Celtics, and we had to buy the book on Celtics for his course. And it was a lot of stuff. And then I had this really interesting moment. We've talked about it on the podcast, but this is like a real thing that happened to me. He asked the room, we finally got into story and structure. He asked the room, what's the definition of a story? And I just like perked up, and I was like, I know this, because it's literally the first thing you had taught me via an email. And he asked me that question. And I looked around the room, and people raising their hands, and people are getting it wrong. And I just said, it's a hero overcoming an obstacle to achieve a goal. And the teacher turned around and changed his slides, because he didn't have that definition. I've learned way more, I would say, outside of film school about screenwriting through you and the stuff you've taught me, also from just sitting down and writing. The real benefit for me was that it forced me to write.
But also you can build, and if you want to talk about your graduating class, since I brought it up, but you can build your community outside of, you don't need to go to film school to build a community of people, of like-minded people who want what you want, which is to become either filmmakers or screenwriter, whatever it is. But it's like, you can build a community, especially online, because you don't need to do that now. So much about the world has changed with the internet and social media. So much, it's changed so rapidly but I think so many people are still stuck in the old model, thinking, well, no, this is how it has to be done. And myself included as well. I sometimes feel that when it doesn't, the world is changing. So we can talk about like generative AI and all of those things, because I'm pretty steeped in those. I sent you a bunch of guides yesterday about how to do some content out of like ChatGPT and stuff. But like you said, technology has just changed things. Like, MySpace was a thing when I was in high school, and Facebook was brand new when I got off my mission in 2008. And I had to figure out how to use that. But YouTube wasn't a thing. I remember sitting in my first class in film school, and one of the assignments was, I want you to write down on a piece of paper, who is the filmmaker that inspired you to be a filmmaker when you were like 12 years old? And then he said, if you were inspired by a YouTuber, come talk to me. I have a different assignment for you. And I was like, what? YouTube was invented in 2005. I graduated in 2004, right? It's just text changed things. So I agree with you on that. But in terms of like your network and growing a network, like my network in my film school, like I went to school with a bunch of really passionate people about film who are way more
way more technically savvy than I am, could make a picture out of a camera I can't even imagine, because they just had access to better technology than I did. They were much younger than me. But I found most of them didn't understand story at all. And the ones who did, there's a small group of us who made it to LA. Out of that group of people, there's like 4 of them still here. One is working at an agency. One is in the WGA and writes on Selena. She's amazing. You should go check out Selena. It's blanking on her name. It's Alexandra, but it'll come up to me. And then there's one guy who was like an announcer, really put in a lot of effort making things happen, and now he's like a head of creative development at a pretty well-known studio. That's it. That's really it. I got a couple of friends who still live in LA, but they're not doing anything in the industry writing related. They're doing the visual effects and things, but they all want to be writers, directors. Like that's what they did. But the group that I think I associate the most with is actually your group from the course.
Yeah. Associate meaning making connections with.
Yeah. I mean, prior to that, like obviously I know people on set. I meet people on set. We trade scripts. We kind of have those things because I'm working with people. And then you learn everybody wants to be a writer. Everybody wants to be a director. Not everybody. There are some people who are like, I love lighting and I love camera and that's what I want to do. But a lot of people want to be writers and directors. And so you can meet a lot of like-minded people that way. Yeah. There are the events and things in LA that you can go to, networking events. There's social media meetups now. There's Zoom meetups with people. But your group, I want to highlight because the value of that group to me is these are people who've invested in themselves to learn from a professional who knows how to do it. And we're all sitting down in this group, and it's a group of people who are highly motivated. They're taking it very seriously. They understand the fundamentals the same way we all do. And then now we're slowly lifting each other up to become better. And there's new people joining every month, and those people are jumping in this ecosystem. I'm very proactive. We trade notes with those people. The notes are way better. I mean, those are my peers. Like one comes into town, we meet up, we go pick it with him and Warner Brothers. He comes to my house, he eats food in my home. And that's Dave Crossman, we talk about all the time, but lots of people in the LA area, that we meet up with and do those things. That's the networking that really matters. And he's right. So just to be clear, because I have a screenwriting course, so that comes with a private Facebook group. That's what you're talking about. And what I see, it's interesting because I am a member of some public Facebook groups, for screenwriting, and I don't go there. I don't know why I'm in them, but I don't go there. They're dark. It's just they're dark places. The people are mean. They talk shit. They don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, it's like what? It's just toxic. But that's definitely not the sense in our group, which is very much more supportive. It's not, and not only that, we haven't even talked about this, Phil, but someone, I think it was Crossman in the group, decided to, hey, should we do a screenwriting contest? A film festival. And so I was like, that's fun. That's a good idea. You told them to do it on a podcast. You said, you were talking on the podcast. You said, and not Crossman, but you said, you know what I think our group needs to do? They need to like just do a thing where they can like exhibit the stuff they're working on. And then someone did it. Right. Someone took the initiative to do it. And it's not, I'm all for it. I'm not involved in it, but I'm all for it. I'm like, that's a great idea. And it just helps. First of all, it raises everyone's profile in the group with amongst themselves, but also that'll spread. I mean, they do this, and one of these things does well. Like if everyone agree on, hey, this movie's really good, or the screenplay is it? I don't even know. Is it a movie or a script? Is it a short? It's produced stuff. So it's taking your content and then producing it as a short. Right. So imagine the top 3 entrants. Everyone agrees like these are the 3 favorite. Like that will have legs. That people will talk about that. They'll share that outside of the group. Mm-hmm. They'll say, I mean, I don't see a downside to this. All I see is upside. There were 2, and I was actually thinking about what stopped them from doing this 2 years ago. And the answer, and I came up with the answer, and the answer was one, someone felt like, well, this is a lot of work, which I get it, it's not a lot, but it's work to organize this. And then the second was they're probably thinking, well, who am I to do this? Who am I to be the person? Like, what am I? I'm just a person. Why should who am I to say I'm capable? Well, why are you not capable? Like, who are you not to be the person? Yeah. Like, you're just as good as anybody else. What's the problem?
But it's overcoming that little mental barrier that you created for yourself, thinking, who am I to make a film a contest? Well, you're you. That's who you are. Now you're the guy. Now you're the guy, or the woman creating this contest and raising your profile in the process, which is only a good thing.
Yep.
So it's not only good for the winners or the contestants, it's good for the people who are involved in doing this.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about it too, like the proactiveness in that group of people, like they have reading groups, and then like that's booked out for like 6 months, where they know for every week who's reading these scripts. They're exchanging notes. They do pitch fests, and they bring in people outside of the group, professionals that they know. They shared their network with you to hear you pitch things, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's nothing but
good for them. I mean, seriously, and I'm not organizing this. They're being proactive, which is what I encourage you to do. This is your destiny. This is your fate. You got to make these opportunities for yourself. And it's only good things to be the person, even if you're just a connector, even if you're just the person that links two people together. Now you are the connector. You're also valuable. So.
Hey, it's Michael Jamin. If you like my videos and you want me to email them to you for free, join my watch list. Every Friday, I send out my top 3 videos. These are for writers, actors, creative types. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. I'm not going to spam you, and it's absolutely free. Just go to michaeljamin.com/watchlist.
No, this is the value of leadership. Like, it's just leadership. Is what
I was even asking. So, are you getting involved in that? Is that what you're?
I'm going to. They don't know this. They'll listen to this and they'll know. But yeah, I've got this final that I did in film school. Right, every project I've ever done, the audio has just been trash. It's just been wrecked. And the problem this time was my cinematographer didn't enable the on-camera audio. And so I did have a good audio person getting the audio. So I just was able to scrape it enough to get up an A on my final and get out, but I never finished the project. Mm-hmm. So that's a project that's sitting there. My friend Ken Joseph, who does the music for your podcast, he's going to do the music on it as well. I'm just going to finally cut it and submit it. And then I'm probably going to put something together with a couple of people from the Tacoma crew who aren't working right now and try to just get something shot and submit it just for fun.
See, and this gets you off your ass. Just lights a fire under your ass to do. But I bet you
I can't not show up, Michael. Like I'm like, not that I have any clout, but it's like I'm number 2 in the group just because of my tech admin status. And so if I don't show up, what message is that sending to people? And so I take that on myself as my responsibility for helping be involved and support the troubleshooting that goes on. Like, okay, I need to be an active participator.
How many winners are they going to choose?
I have no clue on that.
Yeah, well, I look forward to watching the winners. I'm not going to judge, but I'll enjoy the victors. Yeah, I'll enjoy their work. So, and that's just, I mean, again, that's just people taking initiative of their own careers. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you've been preaching for 2 years, man. Like, you've been saying this. It's like no one's going to help you. You got to do it yourself. It's self-reliance. I think this is just a lost American skill set that is a very important one. This is not film school. They don't have to go to film school to do all this. No. Yeah. No.
This is where the conversation started. So
and on that note, it's like, do you have to go to film school? Absolutely not. My answer is no. Am I glad I went to film school? I don't know that I would be in the same place today if I hadn't. I think that I had to go through a lot of that stuff. Are there benefits to going to school and getting a degree in general? I think so. I think, as someone who grew up, poor and, I just kind of had this chip on my shoulder all the time that I was less than. So going and getting a classic education from a liberal arts school, having my eyes opened a little bit more by being encouraged to read stuff I would have never read on my own. A lot of I took classes on feminist literature because that was the course that fit into my schedule to check that box. And I took it. History of, science fiction. Like, wow, learned so much about this genre that I love and saw the influence of that. So there's a lot of those benefits, I think, from a personal development perspective, but I'm also an autodidact. I mean, I've got shelves full of books that I can just read and learn on my own. And I believe anybody can do that. So it's to each their own, you know. And then with kids, my wife is not a believer in college and secondary education. She doesn't really care because it's not something that ever called out to her. I definitely see the value. And so our decision is it's up to our kids to decide, and we'll support whatever they want to do. But I also know I've built a very healthy marketing career on my own that did not go to school for.
Right. The thing is, like, to graduate though with $100 or $150,000 in debt,
it's unsurmountable for a lot of people, especially. And I think this is what the strike highlights is people in Hollywood have this opinion that writers are just driving Lamborghinis and they're loaded. And the answer is no, they're middle-class people. They just live in a city that requires more money to live in, but they live a middle-class lifestyle. That would be the equivalent of a upper middle class lifestyle in any other suburban area of America, doing any other middle class job. There are outliers. It's a bell curve. There are people who make way less. There are a lot of people who make a lot more, but the average in the bell, they're just middle class people, and they're in my neighborhood. I mean, I just moved into this new neighborhood a year ago, and in my neighborhood, I go to this church, and there are 4 people in the industry in the church. One's an editor at Sony. One was like the head gaffer for NCIS, and he's retired now. And the other one's a composer for film and TV, right? But they live in what I would call an upper class, middle class neighborhood. They're not in the Hollywood Hills. I'm further away from LA than I've ever been, because this is where I can afford to put my family.
Right. Yeah. So it's just a little hard to think about having that amount of debt. Is
when you can go to school for, 6-7 years and then start making $1,200 a day as an attorney.
Yeah. So do you really want to add that
for the same debt? For the same debt. So it's crazy.
So it's probably just a better way to spend your money and your time. Probably, I would think. And again, I didn't go to film school. One of the best writers I've ever worked with didn't go to college. She was just a high school graduate. So, it's a question of, can you put the words on the page? The degree will not open doors for you.
No.
Yeah.
And that ties into a limiting belief people talk about all the time is you have to go to Harvard to make it in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there are recruiting groups. There are kind of cliquey things that can happen for sure. Like, and this is, I don't know. So I apologize if this is incorrect, but I've heard that The Simpsons largely hires people from Harvard.
Yeah. And that was really, that news is 30 years old.
Sure.
So I don't even know if they're hiring anymore. The Simpsons is not what it once was. And people aren't leaving that show. If you're a writer on that show, you're not leaving, because
why would you?
Why would you? So I don't know how many writers they hire, and I don't know if it's I know it once was a theater. You go to the Lampoon. If you did the Harvard Lampoon, then maybe you get some.
But that's a qualification, right? To work at the Lampoon, you are qualified because you have to have a certain joke set, a style of joke. So, I mean, that just makes sense to me. I know there's a big USC producing. I wouldn't call it click, but network. Like if you went to the producing school at USC, people that has value to people in the producing side because they know the quality of the education that you had.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, that's alumni networks, and that's been around for forever.
Yeah.
No different. Right. The difference here is I know that if I need to find a job tomorrow, so let's say the strikes end tomorrow and Tacoma FD is canceled, which it's not, but if it did, what's my next step? My step is to send out emails to everybody I know that I've worked with in the 4 years I've been on Tacoma FD, letting them know this is the kind of job I'm looking for. Let me know if you hear anything. And I know that my work ethic will shine, that if there's an opportunity, they'll ask me.
Right.
They'll recommend me that.
Right.
That's the same network. I got that working.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You built that yourself, really. So, another thing you can do if you decide to take a course or a class, and I've talked about this before, so apologize for repeating myself, but whoever your teacher is, if it's screenwriting, ask to read their work. It's okay. That's okay. And you could say, before you sign up, I'd like to read what your work is. And then they'll give you a script. If they're not willing to share their work, what's the problem? It's a red flag. And if you can't, if you read it and you're not sure whether you think it's good or not, there's a simple test. When you turn to page 1 and you get to the bottom of page 1, do you want to turn to page 2? And it's the bottom of every page. Do you want to turn the page and find out what happens next? If it's if you're on the fence, it's not good enough. It really should be captivating. You should want to. It's entertainment. If it's not entertaining you, that's how you judge. There's no secret language to figure out whether, and I didn't know this when I first broke into Hollywood. I didn't know this. I would read a script and I go, it looks like a script. I don't know. Or I was doing coverage for a publisher, and would this book make a good movie? So I was reading a lot of books, and they'd say, do you think it'd make a good movie? And I'm like, I guess. Like, I remember taking months to read or whatever, weeks to read a book and thinking, this is dreadful. I guess it's a good movie. No, it's actually a lot simpler. It shouldn't feel like torture turning the page.
Yeah. And that's a real thing. And having read so much stuff now, pretty quick.
Yeah,
this is
quick.
Gonna suck.
So ask to read their work, and if you don't like it, then don't study from them. They're not gonna it's really as simple as that. And if you do like it, great. Maybe you'll study from them. Still doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a great teacher. Sometimes sometimes they can't crystallize. They can't they just might have some raw talent that they can't really. Doesn't mean they're good at sharing their knowledge. It means they have some kind of thing in them that So there's that.
Well, and let me pay you a compliment too, Michael, because we've had a lot of people go through your course, and one of the common testimonials we get or reviews we get is just how easily digestible it is and how packed with value it is. And I remember we've had two people in particular. One, Bruce Gordon left you this great review. He said that, and I'm paraphrasing him, but he said that the learning, it's the whole course, the learning process is so easy to get through that it's impossible to not get value out of the back end.
Right.
And we had someone who recently signed up within the last month who is literally, this is her job, is learning systems, online learning management. And she wanted to know what platform we were using because she was so impressed with it. And I was like, really? It's the most popular platform. Everyone uses this platform. It's not that. It's the fact that you're teaching valuable stuff organized in a way that makes linear and logical sense that anybody can grasp.
It's really the secret. There's no secret from it. It's just like I try to explain it in very simple terms so an idiot can get it. I'm not interested in.
Oh, and I'm an idiot. You've said things that I've heard 1,000 times over in books and courses, and it wasn't until you said it was like, oh, that's no duh. Like,
yeah.
No, duh.
Okay, because I don't want to make it harder for when I'm working in a writer's room. I don't want to make it harder for myself. I want to make it simple for me to think about these problems. So I don't want to make it harder. The job is hard enough as it is. Why make it harder? Make it simpler. You're telling a story. It's not heart surgery. Don't make it so complicated.
And your structure in the course that you talk about, your bottom of Act 1, the way you define that. Oh my gosh, like that just made so much sense. The first half of Act 2, oh my gosh, makes so much sense. And I remember I was lucky enough, I came out to like Disneyland with my family, and I swung by your garage to talk about marketing stuff for your wife's company, and we were just hanging out like where you're recording, and I remember sitting there and you were like, well, what can I do for you? And I was like, oh, I don't know, man, I just love to know what you think about story. And you broke the whiteboard out for me the same way you do in the course. And I was in film school at the time, and the way you laid it out, I wanted to cry because it was like, this is so easy.
Yeah, see, it's easy. We don't make things harder. My partner, we try not to make things harder than it has to be. And that's not to say it's formulaic or facile. It's just like, no, because you could tell a complicated, nuanced story, but you don't have to make the beats of it complicated. It's you don't have to, because we got to do this every week. You know.
I was watching Get Out on the plane. I've never seen Get Out. I've bought it. I wanted to watch it. I just never made the time. And I watched it on the plane yesterday. And like this thing happens. I was like, I know where we're at. And I checked the time. Oh, we're there. Beat by beat by beat. One of the greatest films of the last 5-6 years. Beat by beat by beat. It's the same story structure we use in Tacoma FD. We use in King of the Hill, wherever it is. It's the same thing. Yeah, same thing. The way Jordan Peele does it, I could never do. Cause surprised, fascinated, great. That's him. But it's the same structure. Right. The structure is the same. Right. So that's where you put the art. The structure is just like, that's building a house. Like, okay, if you know how to frame a house, you should be able to frame the house. And then the color of the paint and the tiles, all that stuff is the
that's the decorations, and that requires your taste and how, how you want to execute it. That's fine, but don't make the structure the hard part.
Yeah,
you know?
It's structures are not hard. You have a foundation and you have steps. That's it. Everything else, the way you put in your electrical system, what type of like water heater you use, the piping you use, how is it connected, the junction box, that's the complicated stuff. That's that's your craft. But the framing in that's a process.
Right.
So one thing I wanted to tell you is I was at dinner with Paul Soter when I was on the Quality tour, and we were talking about writing in the writer's room and TV and all of this stuff. And I told him this advice that you gave me, which was, 1, learn hotkeys if you're going to be a writer's assistant, and 2, shut the F up. Your job is not to talk in the room. Your job is to sit there and take notes and listen and learn. And that's what you're going to do. And Paul Soter paid you and your writing partner a great credit. He said, yeah, I remember my first season in Tacoma. I just remember sitting there and wanting to shut up and say nothing and just learn from these guys.
Oh, wow.
Because although they have great career in indie film and doing major studio films, like they were still learning from you too, because of this. I think it goes back to the simplicity with which you're doing it.
Yeah. And that's another thing. And those guys are, their movies, they've made some really fun movies that people really love. And they've made quite a few. They've made, I don't know how many, maybe probably less than 10 movies, but it's quite a few, but it's probably not more than 10, right?
I think it's 8,
so
I'm gonna say, but yeah.
Okay, let's say it's 8. And many of them have done really, really well. These low budget movies that have really made some money and they have a huge cult following, but they've only told 8 or 10 stories. Whereas like when you're in TV, when we started, we were doing 22 stories a season. And it's that repetition that you really is like, that's where you really learn how to figure out what story structure is. And you do 22 episodes over my 27-year career. It's like, okay, it becomes a lot easier to know what a story is and how to break a story. Whereas in the beginning of my career, I was like, sitting in a writer's room, watching the other more senior writers break a story. It was like a magic trick. It's like, how do you know how to do any of this?
Yeah.
So,
it's cool, man. And so to answer the question, do you need to go to film school? My answer is no. And for most people, I would actually encourage you not to, because you're going to get the debts, you're going to get the student loans, and none of it's going to help you progress in your career. Is there a chance it's going to help you with your craft and get better at your craft? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of it's luck of the draw, though. Like you said, it really depends on the teachers you get, depends on how committed you are. But is it going to make you a better writer? No.
Are there far less expensive ways to get the same amount of knowledge and connections? Yes.
Absolutely.
It might require a little more work, but think about how much money you're saving. So
yeah, there's a doctor, a pretty renowned doctor right now, Peter Attia. Have you heard of him?
No.
Dr. Peter Attia. He's like in the health and fitness and he's a longevity doctor. So he literally tells people how to live. He's Chris Hemsworth doctor, and he
from Harvard. This guy.
I don't think he was Harvard. He was John Hopkins. He was a surgical intern at John Hopkins. But anyway, he's a book just came out just a couple months ago. Really, really good book about longevity. And he talked about this thing called Centenarian Olympics, which is how do I live to be 100 and still be able to get down on the ground and play with my kids and put something in the overhead compartment, like all of the things that kill people, old people, because they don't have that. But he was talking on a podcast about vaping and nicotine and all that stuff, and he's like, I don't have a problem with nicotine. The problem is the device, and it's the tobacco. And this is, for me, I always view things in 2 types. It's risk and reward, and there's levels. There's a scale of risk and a scale of reward, and I think this applies directly to film school for people. The risk is it like getting hit by a tricycle, or is it getting hit by a bus?
Right.
And the reward is, am I bending over to pick up $1 or picking up gold coins?
Yeah.
And there's an offset. If the risk to reward are matched, it might be worth pursuing. If the risk to reward are misaligned, it's not. And my opinion here is it's the financial equivalent of getting hit by a bus to pick up dollars, because you're going to go to LA, be a PA, and you're going to make minimum wage for 4, 5, 6 years, and you may never get out of that. I know people when the AMTP, excuse me, not the AMTP, but the IATSE strike was going on, they were talking about how they never made it past writer's assistant because they'd get on a show and it would get canceled. and then they would get on a show as a writer's assistant and it'd get canceled.
Yeah.
6 years down the road, they haven't become a staff writer, even though they're knocking at the door because luck of the draw.
Yeah, there's luck there. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. All right. Well, there's your answer, Phil. How's that for? All right. Well, before we wrap it up, let's tell people what more they can get. We have a lot of resources that
Lots
free. Forget about paying, Phil. The same film.
Yeah.
I got a film school here. It's free. So
here's the big one, Michael. You talked about if you want to learn from somebody, read their stuff. Well, you give away your stuff. You had me put this on the site, so it's on your about page. There's a form. You fill it out, and then Michael will send you a bunch of actual written and produced episodes of TV show. It's like King of the Hill and a bunch of other stuff in there. But you can go read your produced writing and then go watch the show, which is, I think, a step beyond. It's like you can see what you did and see how it ended up, end result, which is pretty cool. So michaeljamin.com. I want to say it's about, but you can just go to the main navigation. It's about, and you can go get it there, and that'll be sent directly to you. The free lesson, the same lesson you taught me, the one I talked about with my professor, you can get that lesson in a longer format with more detail, with more entertaining, and that's michaeljamin.com/free. It's how to tell a story. You've got a paper orchestra stuff, which we're going to talk about. Webinar every 3 weeks now. We're doing a webinar. It's about story. Absolutely free.
Webinar.
Come join Michael for an hour. Get your questions answered. We've been doing this private VIP thing where you just do Q&A with people for about an hour or so after, and the results coming out of that, people love that. They're big fans of
that one. That is not free. There's a small fee for that to cover some of our expenses, but But
you don't have to do that, and you answer questions throughout the whole webinar as well, and we often put them on podcasts. So you again, access to a professional writer, I would have killed for 10 years ago that I never had. So, and then a paper orchestra. I think that was something you were going to talk about. You were going to tell us a little bit about that process. You're doing the audiobook, right?
Oh, one of the things, I'm excited. That'll be dropping in a couple of months, but so because we're still producing the audiobook. And what I've always, when I was writing this, it's a collection of personal essays. So, but they're stories. It's not an essay. It feels like a story. It feels like you could shoot it. It feels like an episode of a television show. But I wanted people to, at the end, when I was writing it, I want people to feel something like laugh, and then feel this maybe discomfort at the end, or something that hit them in the heart. And I want them to sit in it. And I don't want them, as I was writing, I was like, how do I get people to just sit in this and not turn the chapter? Once the chapter's over, I want them to sit in it. I don't even want them to turn the page. I want them to really just feel it for a while. And in the audiobook, this, like, how do you do that in a regular book? You can't. You can only hope that they do that. When I do my show, as I perform this, as I say afterwards, my goal is I want you to go to your car and just, before you turn the ignition, just sit in it. Like, I'm too rocked to even turn the ignition for a couple, half a minute or whatever. But for the audiobook, I'm actually able to do this. I can force you to do this, because I do the story, and I gave each story, the audiobook, to this composer that I work with, Anthony Rizzo on Marin, who's working with me on the audiobook. And I said, if this story, if this piece, this chapter was a piece of music, what would it sound like to you? Mm-hmm. And so this is his chance to do his art. He came back with these beautiful scores. So at the end of every piece, every chapter, it goes into music that he wrote. And you just listen to it. And it's like it carries you out. It carries the last note of the story is the first note of his score. And it really forces you to, and some of them are up and some of them are down, and some of them are happy, and but it's wonderful how he did this. And so the audiobook, I think this makes it more of an experience, and I haven't heard an audiobook done this way. So
that's so cool. And this having had the privilege of seeing you perform this live last year in LA, it did that for me. I'm thinking about it now. I think it was your story. I think it was called Ghost. Is that right? Ghoul?
The Ghoul,
Ghoul. And man, just thinking about that, all that emotion comes right back.
The score he did for that. The score he did was freaking haunting. I was like, man, this is really good. So I'm so excited.
So the cool thing is, for people who can't see you live, they can get a taste of that performance of you live. Yeah. It sounds like plussed up with some amazing music too.
Yeah. And I do hope to tour with it, but not to every city. It has to your, I guess, bigger cities. But yeah. And so if you want to know more about that or be notified when it drops, it's michaeljamin.com/upcoming. And we're working on it. But okay.
The only other thing was the newsletter, the watch list.
The newsletter.
We do weekly, your top 3 things, some also updates. We started adding updates like what podcast episodes coming out, what webinars coming up, that kind of stuff. Just a little bit more informational, but the value is still there with those 3 free pieces of content delivered every Friday right to your inbox.
Yeah, and
we proactively work to not do anything marketable or salesy to that newsletter. So if you want a lot of free content and you don't really care too much about, some of the other stuff that we're doing with the course and that, you're safe there. Go sign up for the watch list, because it's really meant to be a value add of content that you're putting out already, just digesting it and getting it to people directly in their inbox. Yeah.
It's really, So that's it. So Phil's in charge of all of that. Is it, like, Phil, you do a great job just in keeping all of that up to date and keeping my website up to date.
We just did a whole revamp on it because, when we changed systems last year, there were a lot of people who wanted marketing that were not getting it because we try to protect that watch list so much from any types of salesy stuff. And you're really big on that. You don't want to be a salesy guy at all. So we did clean that up a bit. So if you haven't been here from Michael and you start, it's because we clean that up. But we even just set it up so they can manage their own lists. So if they want to be marketed to and they decide they don't, they can unsubscribe from that, but keep the watch list. We really did a lot of that stuff.
Right.
Trying to make it better.
Yeah. And thank you for all that.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Another great episode. Phil and I will be back very soon with more. Until then, keep writing.
This has been an episode of Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin and Phil Hudson. If you're interested in learning more about writing, make sure you register for Michael's monthly webinar at michaeljamin.com/webinar. If you found this podcast helpful, consider sharing it with a friend and leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. For free screenwriting tips, follow Michael Jamin on social media at Michael Jamin Writer. You can follow Phil Hudson on social media at Phil A. Hudson. This podcast was produced by Phil Hudson. It was edited by Dallas Crane. Music by Ken Joseph. Until next time, keep writing.